The 9,645th meeting of the Security Council is called to order. I should like to take this opportunity to pay tribute on behalf of the Council to His Excellency Mr. Pedro Comisario Afonso, the Permanent Representative of Mozambique, for his service as President of the Council for the month of May. I'm sure I speak for all members of the Council in expressing deep appreciation to Ambassador Afonso and his team for the great diplomatic skill with which they conducted the Council's business last month. The provisional agenda for this meeting is Threat to International Peace and Security. The agenda is adopted. In accordance with Rule 37 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite the representative of Iraq to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. In accordance with Rule 39 of the Council's Provisional Rules of Procedure, I invite Ms. Ana Peiro-Llopis, Acting Special Advisor and the Head of the Investigative Team established pursuant to Security Council Resolution 2379 to participate in this meeting. It is so decided. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of Item 2 of the agenda. I wish to draw the attention of the Council members to document S/2024/408, a letter dated 24 May 2024 from the Acting Special Advisor and the Head of the United Nations Investigative Team to promote accountability for crimes committed by Daesh, Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, addressed to the President of the Security Council. I now give the floor to Ms. Ana Peiro-Llopis.
Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, I am pleased to present today the 12th report of the United Nations Investigative Team to promote accountability for the crimes committed by Daesh ISIL. In line with Security Council Resolution 2697, which extends the mandate of the Special Advisor and the Investigative Team until 17 September 2024 only, the team has initiated its drawdown and liquidation to ensure an orderly withdrawal from Iraq by that date. At the same time, the team continues to deliver its mandated activities under Security Council Resolution 2379. This is being done in close coordination with the government of Iraq and other relevant stakeholders. Since my appointment, I have met regularly with the chair of the National Coordinating Committee as the designated representative of the government of Iraq. I have engaged with other Iraqi authorities, notably the judiciary, who have contributed significantly to our investigations and evidence collection efforts. I have met with survivors and with local civil society organizations. All stakeholders were eager to intensify cooperation prior to the conclusion of the mandate, particularly on the delivery of evidence, other materials, and analyses, as well as on capacity building. Based on this engagement, the team has developed a working calendar with specific dates of planned delivery for its remaining mandated activities. This calendar, which is currently being implemented, has been welcomed as an example of clear and transparent planning and as a guide for the final phase of the mandate. These activities are being conducted in accordance with the relevant Security Council resolutions and terms of reference of the team. The importance of this agreed legal framework has been highlighted during all my meetings with the Iraqi authorities, and particularly paragraphs 27 and 28 of the terms of reference. They state that the competent Iraqi authorities shall be the primary intended recipient of the evidence, other materials, and analysis, and that the team shall share these in accordance with United Nations policies and best practice, and relevant international law, including international human rights law, rules, and standards. In accordance with this legal framework, efforts have been made to return evidence back to the Iraqi authorities in a digital format that the team has consolidated and enriched while developing its evidentiary holdings. In March, the team returned 28 terabytes of evidence to the Iraqi judiciary, which represent the majority of the 40 terabytes held by the team. 2 days ago, on the 3rd of June, another tranche was also returned, consisting of evidence collected from a range of other Iraqi authorities. This tranche also included online and open-source information collected by the team. Finally, evidence collected from Kurdistan regional authorities is ready for delivery and will be returned to these authorities in the coming days as well. Some of these returned evidence was generated because of the close collaboration between the team and the Iraqi authorities, such as when excavating a mass grave together and collecting physical evidence, or acquiring data from seized ISIL digital devices held by the Iraqi authorities with technical support from the team, or also through the digitization of millions of ISIL-related paper records stored in criminal courts across the country. The team has also been active in delivering its own materials and analysis to the Iraqi judiciary along with underlying evidence. This includes evidence originally collected and produced by the team. These are the products of its investigations and have allowed the team to assess, in line with its mandate, that acts committed by Daesh in Iraq may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. An analytical report on the Diwan Bet al-Mal, or the Treasury Department of Daesh, was delivered to the Iraqi judiciary in February. A case assessment report on the Tikrit Air Academy massacre was also delivered 2 days ago, on the 3rd of June. And an analytical report on sexual and gender-based crimes and crimes against children against the Shia Turkmen has also been prepared for delivery over the next days. Finally, additional evidence, other materials, and analyses will be delivered to the Iraqi authorities by 17 September 2024. As agreed with the Iraqi authorities, the team has also prioritized delivery of capacity-building activities. This continued during the reporting period in the areas of mass grave excavations and victim identification, digitization and archiving of Daesh-related records, digital forensics, and witness protection and support. A further 40 activities are scheduled in the working calendar for the remaining weeks ahead, with an emphasis on making the contribution of the team in these areas sustainable. For instance, training will be provided this month to a specialized team designated by the government of Iraq on commercially available evidence management software and systems that the competent Iraqi authorities could tailor to help manage the evidence delivered by the team. I also wish to note that over the past 6 years, in cooperation with the competent Iraqi authorities, the team has excavated 67 mass graves, digitized 18 million pages of ISIL-related paper records, and extracted data from a significant number of seized ISIL digital devices. The team has also continued to respond to requests from third state jurisdictions during the reporting period in support of their national investigations and prosecutions. To date, a total of 20 third states have requested assistance, with 246 requests received overall. 67 requests remain ongoing. These were recently reviewed by the team and prioritized with the intention of completing as many as possible prior to the conclusion of the mandate. In January, the Central Criminal Court in Lisbon, Portugal, convicted an Iraqi Daesh member for committing war crimes in Mosul, largely based on evidence provided by the team in close cooperation with the Iraqi judiciary. These included 13 survivors and witnesses who testified by video conference from Iraq and copies of a case pending before a court of Mosul. This is just one of the many examples where Iraqi judicial counterparts have supported the team in responding to requests from third state jurisdictions. It speaks to the crucial role Iraq will play in ensuring the global accountability of Daesh after the conclusion of the mandate. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, from an administrative perspective, the drawdown and liquidation of the team includes the closure of its offices and the proper management of its human resources and assets. This is ongoing. The preparation of the records and archives of the team, which include evidentiary and non-evidentiary records, has begun as part of the drawdown and liquidation, as well as for the purpose of ensuring their transfer to the United Nations Secretariat by 17 September 2024. This is being done in line with the terms of reference and guided by the report of the Secretary General of 15 January 2024. The importance of maintaining, preserving, and managing these archives has been at the center of my discussions with the chair of the National Coordinating Committee. As further developed in my report, it has been acknowledged in these discussions that the competent Iraqi authorities would retain custody and preserve, store, and manage the original evidence in Iraq, which will have been delivered by the team in line with the terms of reference. These will be for use in domestic criminal proceedings and achieving accountability at the national level. It has also been acknowledged during these discussions that a copy of this original evidence would be kept by the United Nations Secretariat as part of its records and archives, together with other evidence originally collected by the team and other materials and analyses it has produced. The United Nations records and archives would be preserved and stored in a manner that would ensure that they remain protected and accessible in accordance with United Nations policies on classification and access. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, the 12th report is the last mandated report of the team to this Council, and this is the last foreseen oral briefing based on Security Council Resolution 2697. Given this, I wish to refer to the impact of the team and the overall legacy that will be left behind. This legacy and the importance of preserving it was acknowledged in almost every meeting I had over the last few weeks, including with the Iraqi authorities. In this regard, it is important to recall that this year marks the 10th anniversary since Daesh declared itself a caliphate. 10 years later, the calls for accountability to hold those responsible for the international crimes they committed in Iraq remain. As mandated by this Council, the team has contributed towards addressing these calls by factually and legally assessing that the acts committed by ISIL in Iraq between 2014 and 2017 may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. The evidence collected and processed by the team and the other materials and analyses it has produced are also a useful asset. This is the result of our work over the last 6 years, from taking witness testimonies, supporting mass grave excavations and victim identifications, digitizing ISIL-related records, acquiring data from seized Daesh digital devices, and using open-source intelligence techniques to locate and forensically capture ISIL content online. All this is now consolidated into one centralized digital archive organized in a manner that makes it easily searchable. More importantly, the chain of custody associated with this evidence has been done to an international standard to maximize its possible use in judicial proceedings. These products will remain beyond the closure of the team, and member states, including Iraq, could consider them in the future to hold ISIL perpetrators accountable for the international crimes they committed in Iraq. A significant factor behind this legacy has been the personnel working with the team. They are professionals from all over the world and from different fields of expertise, but with a shared commitment of promoting accountability. This includes Iraqi personnel who have been indispensable in the implementation of the mandated activities. The team has sought to develop their skill set so that it can be utilized by Iraq going forward. The same mindset of transferring and sustaining capacity has guided the technical advice, trainings, and equipment delivered by the team to the Iraqi authorities and local civil society organizations over the course of the mandate. This has positioned them to take the next step in areas relevant to their work and Daesh accountability. Mr. President, distinguished members of the Security Council, in closing, let me recall that the request from the government of Iraq in 2017 and the establishment of the team by this Council in response paved the way for 6 years of work that has permitted the team to legally assess that the acts committed by ISIL in Iraq may amount to international crimes. 6 years working closely with the Iraqi authorities and other stakeholders to implement this mandate. 6 years working with survivors, victim families, and impacted communities, including Christian, Kakai, Shabak, Shia, Sunni, Turkmen, and Yazidi. I wish to use my last words to acknowledge the extent of their support and the contribution individuals from these communities have made by coming forward to give their account and share their horrific stories and painful memories. They are, in many ways, inseparable from the legacy of the team and represent the reason why accountability for the international crimes committed by Daesh in Iraq must continue. This is critical, not just to hold those who committed these crimes to account, but also, as this Council underlined in 2017, to ensure that the interests of the survivors in achieving this accountability are fully recognized. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank Ms. Peiro-Llopis for her briefing. I now give the floor to those Council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, President. First, let me congratulate the Republic of Korea on assumption of the presidency for the month of June and pay tribute to Mozambique for their excellent stewardship of our business during the month of May. I'd like to welcome Acting Special Advisor Peiro-Llopis and thank her for her briefing and for her and her team's efforts to work with the government of Iraq to ensure the smooth closure of UNITAD. I also welcome the representative of Iraq to our meeting. President, as we approach the end of UNITAD's mandate in September, it is important to reflect on what it has achieved over the past 6 years. This includes the vast collection and digitisation of evidence of Daesh atrocities so that it can be meaningfully accessed and searched. support to judicial proceedings in 20 jurisdictions, leading to 15 convictions. The excavation of mass graves, which has facilitated the return of remains to the families of victims. This has all been possible thanks to the close cooperation between the UNITAD team and the Iraqi authorities, as well as the brave and unwavering commitment of survivors to give their accounts and document the atrocities that occurred. It is the pursuit of justice for such heinous crimes which led the UK to support the establishment of UNITAD in 2017 with Iraq. We believe there is more work to be done. Looking ahead to the final few months of UNITAD's mandate, we encourage the Special Advisor and the government of Iraq to intensify cooperation to ensure the team's closure is smooth and effective. We also encourage UNITAD to share evidence with Iraq wherever possible and to continue capacity building so that the Iraqi authorities are well placed to continue accountability efforts after September. And in this regard, we welcome the Special Advisor's remarks today. It is also essential that UNITAD evidence retained by the United Nations remains fully accessible so that it can continue to contribute to prosecutions against members of Daesh for international crimes wherever they may be. President, the UK does not see the closure of UNITAD as the end of the fight for accountability against Daesh. As we mark the 10th anniversary since acts of genocide were committed against the Yazidi people, the UK remains committed to working closely with the government of Iraq, the United Nations and the Security Council to ensure justice for the survivors both in Iraq and around the world. I thank you.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Mozambique.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been our first formal meeting this month. Allow me to congratulate the Republic of Korea for assuming the presidency of this Security Council for the month of June. We assure you our fullest support during your tenure. We express our gratitude to Council members, Secretariat, technical staff, interpreters, and security personnel for their effort in ensuring the smooth operation during Mozambique's presidency in May. We also thank Ms. Ana Peiro Lopes, Acting Special Advisor and Head of the United Nations Investigative Team to promote accountability for crimes committed by Daesh ISIL, for their briefing and update on the work of the investigative team. We acknowledge the presence of the permanent representative of Iraq in this meeting. Mr. President, Mozambique commends UNITAD's work takes place in an orderly manner, respecting Iraq's sovereignty and its jurisdiction over crimes committed in its territory. In this regard, we welcome the sharing of evidence originally collected and produced by the team with the relevant Iraqi authorities in accordance with UN policies and practice and relevant international law, as established in the terms of reference. The team's engagement with the Iraqi authorities for the fulfillment of this objective, as outlined in the report, is commendable. Mr. President, ensuring accountability for the crimes committed by Daesh ISIL, which may amount to crimes against humanity and genocide, must continue at national level even after UNITAD's closure. To this end, we emphasize the need of capacity building and training, including forensic capacity, to allow Iraqi authorities to make the best use of the evidence collected by the team throughout its mandate. We also encourage the support to Iraq's authorities by the team, either in form of technical assistance or implementation of domestic legislation. The capacity of Iraq's civil society organizations in the preservation of documentary evidence outlined in the report it also deserves our appreciation. Mr. President, cooperation between the team and Iraq's authorities, particularly the judiciary, including the support of third states, played a pivotal role in the accountability effort for the crimes committed by Daesh ISIL and the need to bring perpetrators to justice. The support provided by the team to judicial authority of Germany and Portugal, with tangible results mentioned in the report, is a good example of such cooperation. To conclude, Mr. President, Mozambique would like to thank UNITAD for its contribution to accountability, justice, peace and stability in Iraq. UNITAD's legacy lies in its commitment to justice, evidence preservation, and ensuring accountability for the crimes committed by Daesh ISIL. This needs to be preserved beyond its mandate. The pursuit of justice is essential for Iraq's transition from conflict to stability. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Mozambique for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. As this is the first public meeting of the month, allow me to assure you of our unwavering support during your presidency, and also to congratulate Mozambique on its successful stewardship last month. I also extend my sincere gratitude to the Acting Special Advisor of UNITAD for her comprehensive briefing, and I welcome the participation of the representative of Iraq at our meeting today. Combating terrorism and ensuring accountability for perpetrators remains a paramount priority for Algeria. In this context, we have vigilantly monitored the activities of the United Nations Investigative Team to promote accountability for crime committed by Daesh in Iraq. In that regard, I would like to highlight the following point. First, I wish to commend the unwavering effort by the Acting Special Advisor and her team to ensure a smooth and orderly conclusion of UNITAD's mandate by 17 September 2024. The collaborative approach of the government of Iraq is indispensable for fostering, collaborative approach with the government of Iraq is indispensable for fostering trust and confidence in the process, especially for the victim seeking justice. Second, transparency. Transparency regarding the remaining investigative activities, evidence delivery timelines, and protocols is of utmost importance. We are reassured by UNITAD's open and transparent engagement with the government of Iraq, including the designated National Coordinating Committee, throughout its drawdown and liquidation phase. Third, ensuring the proper conservation and preservation and storage of all evidentiary and non-evidentiary record and archive necessitate close cooperation with relevant Iraqi authorities, bearing in mind that the competent Iraqi authorities shall be the primary recipient of the evidence collected, preserved, and stored by the investigative team. Fourth, capacity building activities to enhance Iraqi capabilities, particularly in areas such as mass grave excavations, archiving, digital forensics, and witness protection, remain critically important as UNITAD's work draw to close. We urge all relevant stakeholders to further prioritize these programs over the remaining month of UNITAD's mandate. Doing so will cement sustainable progress in relevant government institutions and agencies. Mr. President, UNITAD's contribution would not have been possible without the steadfast support and cooperation of Iraq at every stage of the process, respecting the sovereignty and jurisdiction authority of Iraq over crimes committed on its soil has been the foundational pillar of UNITAD's work. We call on all actors to continue upholding the sacrosanct principle as future accountability efforts are pursued. Finally, Mr. President, I would like to emphasize that the continued partnership with Iraqi authorities, between the Iraqi authorities, the United Nations, and the international community remains vital to upholding accountability for crimes committed by terrorist groups. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Господин председатель.
Mr. President, I wish to take this opportunity to express gratitude to the Republic of Mozambique for its successful stewardship of the Security Council in May, and I wish to welcome the Republic of Korea during its presidency this month. We also welcome Iraq at the table, at the horseshoe table here. We welcome Madam Lopez as head of the investigative team. We are grateful to her for the comprehensive briefing and also for her courage in the decision to head up the investigative team at a time when, after many long years of imitation of activity under the stewardship of some fine men who repeatedly briefed the council, the time has arrived to genuinely deliver upon the mandate of the team and to conclude its work. Our hope is that under her stewardship, the investigative team will undertake all efforts in order to move closer to the fulfillment of the main mandated task for UNITAD, namely the transfer to Iraq of absolutely all evidence which was compiled during its work. We understand that this is a complicated task, and not just because the group is currently in the home stretch on the path towards closure. We are talking about systemic failures which the previous leadership allowed to occur, and we will revisit this question. The Russian Federation attributes tremendous significance to the issue of holding terrorists to account. At the same time, we believe that the main role needs to be played by the authorities and the judicial organs of the states where the militants' crimes were carried out. This is particularly relevant for such countries as Iraq, where the activities of terrorists had catastrophic consequences throughout the entire country. In this context, we continue to closely scrutinize delivery by the investigative team for accountability for crimes perpetrated by ISIL-Daesh in Iraq, delivery by this team of its mandate in support of national efforts to collect, preserve, and store in Iraq evidentiary holdings of crimes in ISIL pursuant to Security Council resolutions 2379 and 2697, as well as the terms of reference which were approved by the Council. We wish to draw attention to a detail which is technical in nature but important: the need for the naming of terrorist groups, of the ISIL group in UNITAD documents and the relevant websites, for this name to be reflective of Resolution 2379, which was approved by the investigative team. The arbitrary renaming of terrorist groups should not take place, especially in the light of their being listed in national legal systems. I now turn to the essence of the matter. There has been positive momentum in cooperation with the Iraqi authorities. However, this was only observed during the 7th year of UNITAD's work. Before that, for years, we sought from the former Special Advisor, Mr. Khan, transparency in his work. However, he kept the Council in the dark and misled the Council, justifying this inaction with various pretexts, namely a dangerous situation, a classified investigation, the absence of national legislation, failure of Baghdad to comply and cooperate. However, now as we see, Mr. Khan, instead of genuinely collecting evidence of ISIL crimes, generally received information from the authorities of Iraq themselves, and not just without the permission of the country's authorities, but without their knowledge, organized access for Western countries to the evidentiary base holdings of UNITAD. And at the same time, the Iraqis themselves were denied access. We frequently reminded both Mr. Khan and Mr. Reacher that UNITAD was established by the Security Council not under Chapter 7 of the Charter. Its goal is to deliver technical assistance to the Iraqi authorities in ensuring accountability for crimes perpetrated by ISIL in Iraq. Well, the team did not have an objective or a task to supplant national jurisdiction or national justice, nor was it entitled to attempt to impose any decisions, nor did it have the right to impose any decisions upon Iraq. We believe that had the investigative team from the very beginning of its activity stringently and conscientiously respected the mandate entrusted to it, proactively seeking evidence of crimes, and had it supported the national efforts of law enforcement and judicial bodies of Iraq, providing with them with all necessary evidence in full, then the Iraqi judicial system had already concluded. It would have concluded the process of holding terrorists to account, which did not take place. Initially, the intention was for UNITAD to work with the Iraqi law enforcement, and for this to be done hand in hand, helping them with analysis and technical assistance in the conduct of investigative proceedings, rather than covertly compiling secretly from them materials, which, as we understand, ultimately are inadmissible as evidence in many cases, in the light of failure to comply with basic procedural norms. Ultimately, when it came to real evidence, right now, that is only what can be counted as admissible evidence is what has been collected from the Iraqis themselves. And in this way, the years-long sabotage by the UNITAD leadership of the key mandate has resulted in the fact that thousands of ISIL members were not punished. Many of them in this time managed to flee Iraq and to conceal themselves in other countries. These dubious results undermine trust not just in this investigative team, but they also undermine trust in the Institute of Technical Assistance for Criminal Justice through the UN. For us, an indicator in the success of the work and the key aspect of the mandate was and remains the number of trials in the national judicial system of Iraq on the basis of evidence collected and systematized by the team. Unfortunately, today, after 7 years of work by the team, the number of these trials equals 0. And this means that UNITAD failed to meet the main task entrusted to it. UNITAD has less than 3 months prior to the conclusion of its mandate. So a question arises: who will be held accountable for such poor mandate delivery? The former leaders have already left their posts, and apparently they did not wish to shoulder responsibility for the results of its work. So it turns out that perhaps they could gain political capital in empty council briefings prior to moving on to more interesting work. The current leadership should spare no effort in order to ensure that just before the curtain falls, that they maximally facilitate the launch of judicial proceedings in Iraq. To that end, there's a need to expeditiously, without preconditions, hand over all of the materials collected to the Iraqi authorities. We trust that this key objective will be met prior to the expiration of the mandate of UNITAD, that is, prior to 17 September 2024. The Russian delegation firmly believes that international crimes perpetrated by ISIL terrorists have no statutory limitations, and all related perpetrators need to be held to account under the Iraqi national judicial system. Turning now to the question of the location for the storage of the material of the investigative team. The response to us to this question is quite clear. Paragraph 10 of the Security Council approved terms of reference of UNITAD stipulates that the United Nations and the Iraqi government, following the expiration of the mandate of the investigative team, will agree between themselves on measures for the chain of custody for the original evidence and materials collected, preserved, and stored by the investigative team in Iraq, as well as other materials and analyses produced by the investigative team. In this way, we proceed from the premise that the question of preservation of material compiled by UNITAD following its closure will be agreed upon bilaterally between the UN and the Iraqi authorities in a manner that fully respects Iraqi sovereignty and its jurisdiction vis-à-vis crimes perpetrated on its territory. There is an important need to remember that the United Nations was invited to help. In the delivery of technical assistance, there is a need to respect the sovereignty interests, values, traditionals, and specificities of the host state, including cultural, legal, historical, religious, and linguistic features. To conclude, we wish also to note and to say a few words about the question of the heritage and legacy left behind by the team. We hope that the full mandate delivery will be the main legacy of the group. Recently, unfortunately, a trend has arisen of establishing some certain monuments to various UN structures which conclude its activities. This does not seem to be the correct way for us in terms of distribution and use of the budgetary resources of the organization. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of China.
President, allow me to begin by congratulating the Republic of Korea on assuming the Council's presidency for the month of June. You can count on the full support of the Chinese delegation. I also wish to applaud Mozambique for conducting and completing its presidency with flying colors last month. I thank Acting Special Advisor Ms. Yopis for her briefing. I welcome the presence of the Iraqi representative. Last September, the Security Council adopted Resolution 2697. The resolution decides to extend the mandate of the team for the last time until 17th of September 2024 only. We welcome the positive progress achieved by the team in the past 6+ months in drawdown and liquidation. We encourage UNITAD to continue to implement Council resolutions and complete its withdrawal in a timely and orderly manner based on extensive consultations with the Iraqi government. Handing over evidence to the Iraqi government is a priority security in the drawdown stage, we encourage the team to transfer in a systematic way the full set of evidence to the host government without delay. It is imperative that the team uphold transparency and non-discrimination and obtain prior consent from the Iraqi government before sharing evidence and archives with a third state. Where evidence and archives are already shared with a third state, the team shall inform the Iraqi government promptly. President, while the mandate of the investigative team is drawing to a close, we cannot and will not relent our counterterrorism efforts at international level. Iraq remains at the forefront of the global fight against terrorism. The international community must continue to support Iraq's capacity building to prevail over terrorism and its efforts to maintain national security. I thank you, President.
I thank the representative of China for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. President. I join in congratulating Mozambique on a successful presidency in May and wish the Republic of Korea a very successful presidency for this month. You have Guyana's full support. I thank Ms. Lopez, Acting Special Advisor and Head of UNITAD, for her briefing and welcome the participation of the representative of Iraq in today's meeting. Guyana commends UNITAD for its work in investigating and documenting the crimes committed by Daesh ISIL in accordance with the mandate provided by the Security Council. The atrocities inflicted by this extremist group have left a legacy of immense pain and suffering for the people of Iraq and the wider region. The accountability sought through UNITAD's mandate not only covers past crimes, but is a cornerstone for peace and stability and the rule of law in the affected regions, a deterrent to future atrocities. Guyana stands firmly with the global community in pursuing accountability by Daesh ISIL and in supporting all efforts to have justice for victims and survivors. We recognize the critical contribution of UNITAD over the past 6 years in collecting and preserving and analyzing evidence of the crimes committed in Iraq and in storing and organizing the evidentiary material. We note the progress made in the investigations, including those into crimes committed against minority groups. Mr. President, Guyana commends the efforts of UNITAD towards having a smooth conclusion of its mandate and in promoting continuity of its work. The increased cooperation with the Iraqi authorities during this drawdown period is particularly important in pursuing efforts to hold Daesh ISIL operatives accountable for their crimes. We particularly welcome the enhanced efforts at capacity building and training by UNITAD, which are being undertaken at the request of the Iraqi authorities, recognizing the importance of this towards equipping them to take essential next steps in mass grave excavations and victim identification, archiving and digitization, digital forensics, witness protection, and psychosocial support. Mr. President, the importance of maintaining, preserving, and managing the archives of the evidence collected by UNITAD cannot be overstated. These records must be preserved and remain accessible for use in future judicial proceedings. In this regard, we note the recommendations in the Secretary General's January 2024 report for the archives of the UN Secretariat to be maintained in a specified manner. This is in addition to the other requirements of the resolution. Mr. President, in conclusion, while the mandate of UNITAD will end in a few months, accountability efforts for the crimes of Daesh ISIL must continue. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Merci, le président.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wish to take this opportunity to thank Mozambique, which effectively steered our proceedings during the month of May, and I also wish to take this opportunity to assure you of France's full support during your presidency this month. Mr. President, I wish to thank the Acting Special Advisor, Ana Lopez, for the presentation of the 12th UNITAD report. As regards the last progress report prior to the completion and the conclusion and closure of UNITAD, I wish to thank the 3 special advisors, the successive special advisors at the helm of UNITAD, as well as all teams for the work that they have done. Madam Special Advisor, you recently assumed your duties, but we have already seen the brilliant results of your initiatives. We encourage you to continue your commitment to ensure the most orderly possible closure of UNITAD. President, I wish to applaud the presence of the permanent representative of Iraq and to applaud the decisive cooperation of Iraq with the international community and with UNITAD over the course of the past few years to ensure that there be justice rendered for all victims of the crimes perpetrated by Daesh in Iraq. Thanks to UNITAD's initiatives on the ground alongside the Iraqi national and local authorities, meaningful progress has been achieved for justice to be delivered in the wake of the crimes perpetrated by Daesh in Iraq. UNITAD thereby contributed meaningfully by bringing together elements of proof which help to qualify acts perpetrated by Daesh as crimes that may constitute international crimes in line with the mandate entrusted to it by the Council. The report takes stock of this. The investigative work carried out helped to document the crimes perpetrated against various religious and communities and minorities, gender-based violence and crimes, sexual-based violence, sexual crimes and crimes against children, crimes with the use of chemical weapons, as well as the destruction of cultural heritage. The expertise and technology used by UNITAD to avoid the loss and deterioration of the evidence, as well as its expertise at the forensic level and the collection of witness testimony, helped to make headway in cooperation with the Iraqi authorities. We applaud the victim-centered approach and the gender perspective that has been embraced by UNITAD in all of its work, and we also welcome its engagement vis-à-vis Iraqi civil society. As the mandate of UNITAD is set to terminate next September, we stress the importance of continuing to work hand in hand for the perpetrators of crimes committed by Daesh in Iraq to be held accountable. The fruit of the work carried out by UNITAD pursuant to the mandate entrusted to it by the Council should not be lost. The elements of proof and evidentiary holdings gathered by UNITAD during its mandate should remain accessible, including when it terminates, including in third states pursuant to UN policies for classification and access. Coordination efforts with the competent services of the Secretary General of the UN in consultation with the Iraqi authorities should continue to that end. The fight against impunity should be pursued. Justice should be delivered to both victims and their loved ones. There's an important need for the perpetrators of the crimes to be held accountable regardless of their whereabouts. Mr. President, France reiterates its commitment to counterterrorism and countering impunity. The threat posed by Daesh has not evaporated. Alongside our partners, specifically the International Coalition Against Daesh, France shall continue to stand alongside Iraq in its fight against terrorism. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Ecuador.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin by wishing every success to the Republic of Korea as you lead the work of this organ this month. And I'd also like to recognize the successful work conducted by Mozambique last month. I would like to thank Madame Perrault, Acting Special Advisor and Head of UNITAD, for introducing the report, and I welcome the representative of Iraq in this chamber. It has been 7 years since it was created, and less than 4 months remain of its mandate, and we see that UNITAD has shown itself to be an example of cooperation with Iraq, other states and international organizations. Its work centered on the gathering, preservation and storage of evidence has shored up Iraqi efforts so that those that have committed serious crimes are held accountable before the law. Mr. President, Excellencies, colleagues, in Resolution 2697, the Security Council responding to the request by Iraq, extended the mandate of UNITAD until the 17th of September 2024 for one last time. The constructive dialogue that UNITAD has had with the Iraqi authorities to ensure an orderly withdrawal, including with the National Coordinating Committee, are key to achieving this goal. A critical issue relating to the conclusion of UNITAD's mandate is the preservation and management of evidence gathered and its use in criminal proceedings. In this regard, Ecuador agrees with the recommendations of the Secretary-General, namely that UNITAD must, in observance of international law and the terms of reference and in respect for the sovereignty of Iraq, return the evidence received from the Iraqi authorities, as well as provide them with any other evidence that they are in a position to share. We must remember that the Iraqi authorities are the main recipients of such evidence, and it is up to them to continue with the work of investigation and prosecution of those responsible for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. In this regard, the establishment in the Secretariat of a repository for evidence in order to guarantee that the confidential information remains protected will facilitate the requests by Iraq and other states and survivors, as well as civil society organizations. The contribution of UNITAD to the strengthening of capacity of Iraqi institutions must continue, promoting technical cooperation initiatives that are adapted to national needs. In conclusion, Ecuador underscores the need to preserve the legacy of UNITAD as a testimony to the efforts of Iraq and of the international community to prevent impunity for the crimes committed by Daesh. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Ecuador for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Slovenia.
Thank you, President. Allow me to join others in congratulating you for the assumption of the presidency. Wish you the successful steering of the Council through the month of June and assure you of our full support. I thank the Acting Special Advisor, Ms. Pedro Lopes, for the presentation of the latest 12th report of the work of UNITAD, and I also welcome the representative of Iraq to the meeting. Mr. President, we highly appreciate the work of UNITAD in its valuable contribution to ensuring justice for all victims of crimes committed by Daesh on the Iraqi territory. Thanks to the efforts of UNITAD on the ground, more progress has been achieved. With the UNITAD's drawdown and liquidation plans initiated, we value that during this phase, priority is given to the preparation of evidence, other material and analysis for delivery to the competent Iraqi authorities in accordance with the Resolution 2379 and 2697, as well as the term of reference. We welcome that many of these activities have been undertaken alongside the relevant Iraqi authorities within the framework of capacity building and training. In this regard, I'd like to make the following 3 points. First, this year marks a somber anniversary, 10 years since Daesh declared itself a caliphate, the apex of its reign of terror in Iraq. Towns and villages were razed, entire societies were torn apart, left to bear immense loss. Terrorism has inflicted and continues to inflict deep wounds on the societies affected in Iraq and beyond. Women are often the first targets. After nearly 10 years, these survivors continue to yearn for justice. This should be a reminder that we must do our utmost to ensure that those responsible for the crimes committed by Daesh in Iraq are brought to justice. The work of UNITAD, alongside Iraqi national and local authorities on the ground, is critical to holding members of Daesh accountable for crimes committed against Yazidis, Christians, and Shia Muslims, and in some cases against Sunni Muslims, Kurds, and other minorities, as well as sexual and gender-based crimes and crimes against children. Second, we greatly value UNITAD's survivor-centered approach and their perpetrator-centered investigations. The documentation and evaluation of cases of sexual and gender-based crimes, particularly against women and girls from minority communities, is essential to ensure accountability as sexual and gender-based violence, including human trafficking, sexual slavery, and forced marriage, were used as weapons of terror by Daesh. There must be no impunity for these serious crimes. Victims and survivors deserve justice. For this, it is essential to criminalize in national legislation international crimes, particularly those related to sexual and gender-based violence. We encourage the government of Iraq to adopt such national legislation as soon as possible. Slovenia stresses that such legislation must preclude the application of the death penalty in line with the UN best practices. Third, the materials and analysis produced by UNITAD have allowed it to assess within its mandate the acts committed by Daesh in Iraq may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. It is critical that these materials can be used effectively to serve international criminal investigations and proceedings, both in Iraq and elsewhere. The only way we can achieve it is by ensuring all evidence and other documents are stored in active and accessible archives that ensure further analysis of the evidence collected and its probative value. Mr. President, while some of the investigations may not be finalized by the end of the UNITAD's mandate, and some requests for mutual assistance from third states may go unanswered, we call on the government of Iraq to ensure that the crimes committed by Daesh continue to be prosecuted in accordance with international law and the principle of the rule of law. UNITAD's support to the Iraqi authorities provides a ledge for them to take the next step. Even though the UNITAD's mandate draws to a closure, the fight against impunity must continue. The UNITAD's legacy must be preserved, and the best way to do it is by ensuring that UNITAD's products can be used effectively. We owe this to all the survivors, to all courageous witnesses who came forward to share their stories. And their stories must not be overlooked or forgotten, nor should be the memories of the victims who perished. The best way to honor them is to hold perpetrators accountable, no matter where they are. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Slovenia for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Malta.
Thank you, President. First, I would like to congratulate the Republic of Korea for assuming the presidency for the month of June. You can count on Malta's support. And I would like to thank Mozambique for their stewardship of the presidency last month. I thank Ms. Peyor Lopez, Acting Special Advisor and Head of the Investigative Team, for her report and for her briefing. And I also welcome the permanent representative of Iraq to this meeting. This meeting provides for a timely opportunity to recognise the important work done by the investigative team in the field of international criminal justice and in fulfilling its mandate of promoting accountability for acts that may amount to war crimes, crimes against humanity, or genocide committed by ISIL-Daesh. Notably, the team produced a rich set of materials and analysis which consolidated and delivered factual and legal findings which Member States, including Iraq and their competent authorities, can consider as they work domestically to hold ISIL members accountable for crimes committed in Iraq. Malta therefore commends the role played by the team in supporting accountability efforts in cooperation with Iraqi authorities. Moreover, Malta appreciates the survivor-centric approach the team has adopted and implemented throughout its mandate, as well as its field-based presence and engagement. This gives survivors and witnesses the opportunity to contribute to the accountability process. President, it is important to preserve the legacy of UNITAD. This includes the storage of evidentiary and non-evidentiary records and archives. In this sense, Malta applauds the capacity-building support delivered by the team to the Iraqi authorities, particularly the archiving and digitalization support, enabling the Iraqi criminal courts to preserve their holdings and expedite their work. We also see as a positive development the progress made by the Ministry of Interior to move closer towards fully establishing its witness protection and support unit. In line with this development, we reiterate our call for the adoption of a domestic legal framework enabling the prosecution of international crimes, namely genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Such legislation should preclude the application of the death penalty in line with UN best practices. We also welcome the delivery of capacity building and training in other relevant areas, with a view to cementing progress achieved over the course of the mandate while ensuring sustainability beyond it. We mention in particular the trainings to relevant civil society organisations on trauma-informed approaches, problem management and witness protection. I would also like to refer to the information provided in the report about the investigated crimes. We note that gender and age were key factors in determining the crimes ISIL perpetrated against targeted victims. The crimes committed against the Yazidi community, including murder, rape, sexual violence, torture, enslavement, sexual slavery, and conscription of children into an armed group, are particularly concerning. Their stories and the memories of the victims who perished must be remembered. They are the essence and foundation of accountability for the crimes of ISIL on which truth depends. In closing, President, I reiterate that the work of UNITAD constitutes an important example of how the UN can help post-conflict countries' efforts towards peace and security. It also serves to show how progress can be achieved through active cooperation with national institutions. Malta is therefore supportive of an orderly drawdown phase, which fully respects the need to appropriately deal with confidential and sensitive evidence in the team's possession, and expresses appreciation for the team's work throughout the years, an important contribution in ensuring that there is no impunity for atrocity crimes committed by Daesh in Iraq. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Malta for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and please allow me to join in my council colleagues here in congratulating Mozambique on the completion of its successful presidency and wishing the Republic of Korea a successful presidency for the month of June. You have the United States' full support. And thank you, Acting Special Advisor Pero Yopes, for your comprehensive briefing on UNITAD's pursuit of accountability for Daesh's crimes in Iraq. We appreciate the progress you have made since assuming this post. We also welcome the participation of Iraq here today. There is no disputing the importance of UNITAD's work. As other council members have noted, we are approaching the 10-year mark since Daesh began committing genocide and crimes against humanity against groups in areas that were once under its control, including against the Yazidis, Christians, Kurds, Shia Muslims, and other minorities, as well as some Sunni Muslims. A decade later, these communities still seek justice. The United States stands with them. We believe accountability for these crimes will contribute to peace and security in Iraq and the region. UNITAD provides wide-ranging support to Iraqi authorities. It builds the capacity of the Iraqi judicial system, facilitates mass graves being exhumed, collects evidence, engages victims' families and survivors, and analyzes battlefield evidence to help identify perpetrators of atrocities and understand Daesh's structure and operations. UNITAD has also contributed to justice beyond the borders of Iraq. UNITAD's efforts supports members of Daesh, including foreign terrorist fighters who have been repatriated to face prosecution in their home states. Perpetrators of grave international crimes should not escape justice. The Security Council must do all it can to help Iraq's post-conflict transition once UNITAD's mandate ends in September. This includes ensuring the transfer of evidence and other holdings in a manner that preserves their evidentiary value. Iraq and other member states should also continue to receive support, pursuing accountability wherever victims and perpetrators are found. We urge member states to continue using the evidence compiled to prosecute their nationals who joined Daesh and committed international crimes and terrorist acts. Given the critical importance of this work, the United States has been clear that we expect an orderly and deliberate drawdown and liquidation of UNITAD's functions. In that spirit, and per its December 2023 letter to the Security Council, we welcome the government of Iraq's affirmation that it would like to share evidence with all states after UNITAD has shut down operations. Additionally, the United States encourages UNITAD to continue working with the government of Iraq to turn over as much evidence as possible. These efforts must be in accordance with UNITAD's terms of reference and in adherence with witness protection standards and the witness's informed consent. At the same time, we acknowledge that, for various reasons, UNITAD will not be able to turn over all of its evidence to Iraq by September. The United States therefore supports ensuring that all of UNITAD's evidence, whether held by Iraq or the UN, be preserved in an active manner with appropriate analytic capacity so that it remains accessible to law enforcement authorities. Colleagues, as this is the last of our periodic briefings on UNITAD, the United States urges members of this Council to work together to ensure that we can continue our collective efforts to deliver justice for the crimes of Daesh. We stand ready to work with stakeholders to explore all options. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sierra Leone takes this first opportunity to congratulate you and the Republic of Korea on assuming the presidency of the United Nations Security Council. We assure you of our full support. In a similar vein, we commend and congratulate Mozambique on their successful presidency of the Council for the month of May and recognize the important work done. With respect to our meeting, let me also thank Ms. Ana Peiro Llopis, Acting Special Advisor and Head of the Investigative Team, for her comprehensive briefing on the team's 12th report. I welcome the participation of the Permanent Representation of Iraq in this meeting. As this is our first statement on this agenda item in the Security Council, we wish to emphasize at this point the importance of accountability for atrocity crimes and to end impunity. We therefore express our strong support for the work of the UNITAD team. We are committed to prioritizing accountability efforts throughout our term on the Security Council and commend UNITAD's efforts since its mandate began in 2017. We also take note of the commitment of Iraq to working with UNITAD. Sierra Leone welcomes the positive developments, including steps taken by the government of Iraq to investigate and document crimes by Daesh in Iraq, to hold them accountable, and to ensure justice for the victims and the society at large. We also urge the Iraqi government to continue to implement robust reforms in the security and justice sectors as we look forward to sustained action in adopting appropriate national legislation and regulatory mechanisms to ensure the rule of law now and post-UNITAD. In line with our commitment to international law and accountability, we would like to make the following 3 points. First, we note the assessment provided by the Acting Special Advisor regarding the drawdown and liquidation plans and commend the investigative team for their efforts in documenting and investigating heinous crimes in Iraq over this period. While expressing our support for UNITAD's efforts, we also recognize the potential risks associated with unaddressed mutual assistance requests from third-party national authorities and the significant impact this could have on future investigations and prosecutions of crimes committed by ISIL Daesh. Addressing these challenges is crucial to ensure that crimes committed by Daesh are prosecuted in accordance with international law and the rule of law. Second, accountability and justice are also crucial for preventing atrocities and establishing lasting peace. We commend UNITAD for investigating and documenting crimes by Daesh in Iraq and urge the Iraqi government to adopt relevant national legislation to ensure adherence to the rule of law post-UNITAD. We are of the firm view that accountability mechanisms such as UNITAD provide a legacy of transparency, trust, and stability, ultimately leading to a more peaceful and prosperous society. The government of Iraq must ensure sustained actions in giving a voice to the victims of Daesh, including women and children who were subjected to horrific sexual violence. Third, We also welcome the review and assessment of the acting special advisor and team. We note that with the proper, orderly, and consistent implementation of this plan, the investigative team will successfully fulfill its mandate by September when the mandate expires. The unified repository of digitized information of evidence gathered by the investigative team of UNITAD is a welcome development. The government of Iraq, interested parties, as well as other member states must have access to this digital repository, guided by established parameters of United Nations policies and best practice and relevant international law, rules and standards regarding the sharing of evidence. In this regard, we commend the team's transparent engagement with the government of Iraq and relevant UN departments and stakeholders, emphasizing the importance of documenting, preserving, and managing both evidentiary and non-evidentiary materials. Storage and preservation of the materials of the investigative team post-UNITAD must be guided by the systems which have been put in place to not only the integrity of the evidence, but to also protect. The investigative team must also provide Iraqi authorities with adequate training in this regard. Mr. President, we emphasize the importance of regional and international cooperation to facilitate progress in Iraq and to also bring perpetrators of various crimes to justice. Long-term initiatives are also needed to promote reconciliation and prevent future violence. We can use UNITAD's effort in Iraq to advocate for future accountability measures in other situations as appropriate. The lessons learned from UNITAD operations in Iraq are crucial as the country transitions from conflict to stability and prosperity. UNITAD has been instrumental in excavating mass graves, collecting and documenting evidence, and holding Daesh members accountable for crimes against various groups in Iraq and neighboring countries. Considering this, the Iraqi government must pursue justice and accountability for historical transgressions, while strengthening legal reforms and judicial infrastructure. The international community, including the UN Field Team, UNDP, and UN Habitat, should continue to collaborate with Iraqi government on infrastructural and socio-economic development. In closing, Mr. President, the impact of terrorism in Iraq and the neighboring countries has caused significant harm, with women and children bearing the brunt of the suffering. Nevertheless, Iraqis must look ahead and maintain their unwavering commitment to building a safe, secure, and stable nation. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Sierra Leone for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Switzerland.
Mr. President, I would like to first of all congratulate Mozambique for their successful presidency last month and assure you, President, of the full support of Switzerland for your mandate in June. I would like to welcome Ana Pero Lopez, the new Special Advisor, and wish her success in this crucial period. And I also welcome the participation of the representative of Iraq. I would like to make two main observations. First, justice for the victims of Daesh crimes must remain a common priority. While we welcome the ongoing efforts to implement the roadmap for an orderly conclusion of UNITAD's mandate, we expect Iraq, as well as all other states concerned, to continue ensuring that all crimes committed by Daesh are prosecuted in accordance with international law. The end of UNITAD's mandate must not lead to impunity for the perpetrators of these crimes. Switzerland, therefore, continues to support the work of the investigative team and the work of an impartial justice system committed to ensuring justice for the victims and the protection of their rights. UNITAD has also engaged with Iraqi civil society and succeeded in establishing a much-needed dialogue. The loss of this point of contact at the end of the mission is regrettable. Second, the management of evidence and the preservation of UNITAD's legacy are essential. In view of the many legal proceedings that will not be completed before the end of UNITAD's mandate, we must ensure that its work is preserved and that the evidence collected remains accessible. Switzerland therefore welcomes the exchange between UNITAD and the UN Archives and Records Management Section aimed at establishing a current archive system. Such an innovative solution would ensure permanent access to the evidence held by the investigation team in order to continue holding accountable the perpetrators of the crimes committed by Daesh on a global scale. In this respect, access to evidence must be granted in accordance with United Nations policies and best practices. We therefore reiterate our opposition to the sharing of evidence in judicial proceedings that could lead to the death penalty. Also, because of its incompatibility with respect for human dignity and human rights, Switzerland is opposed to capital punishment under all circumstances. Mr. President, as demonstrated by the numerous requests for assistance from Member States, UNITAD's contribution to accountability efforts is crucial. The team's work with survivors, families and affected communities must also be highlighted. Their stories, like the memory of the victims who perished, must not be forgotten. We therefore support continued cooperation between Iraq and UNITAD in this final phase in order to find lasting solutions to ensure that the crimes committed by Daesh continue to be prosecuted in Iraq and elsewhere. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Switzerland for their statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Japan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to join others to congratulate Mozambique for their successful presidency on the difficult month of May. Also, we are very much looking forward to working with our closest neighbor country, Republic of Korea, for the productive month of June under its presidency. Let us assure our full support. Mr. President, I thank Ms. Anna Peyroliopoulos, Acting Special Advisor and Head of the UNITAD, for her briefing, and I welcome the representative of Iraq for this meeting. Through its Resolution 2697, the Security Council decided to extend the mandate of UNITAD until 17th of September 2024 only. We recall that its closure by upcoming September is in line with a request by the host country, Iraq. We took note of the progress made in consolidation and delivery of the investigative results that was highlighted in the report of the Acting Special Advisor. Among its 6 field-based and 2 thematic investigative lines, it is unfortunate to see that some of them will have to remain incomplete due to the conclusion of the mandate or need to prioritization. That being said, we commend the work of the UNITAD since its last mandate renewal. We understand that UNITAD has striven to finalize the investigative results to deliver to the competent Iraqi authorities as much as possible in a much shorter period of time than previously expected. It is encouraging to learn that the drawdown and liquidation process of UNITAD is steadily proceeding and that the team has been committed to transparent planning and more active engagement with the government of Iraq. In particular, the deepening understanding between the government and UNITAD on the handling of evidence and other materials is a positive development. We hope this will continue until the team's closure. Since its establishment in 2017, UNITAD has greatly contributed to ensuring accountability for crimes committed by ISIL. As the closing date for the UNITAD is approaching, its legacy that serves this purpose needs to be properly preserved and carried forward. The teams has been rigorously engaged in collecting the copies of the original evidence and other materials which may be used for the legal procedures in the future. Therefore, it is important to discuss the modality of this archive thoroughly among stakeholders. We too are ready to engage constructively in this discussion. To conclude, Mr. President, recalling the contributions the team has also made to the healing of survivors, victim families, and impacted communities, we would like to extend a great appreciation to the dedication UNITAD has shown throughout its mandate. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Japan for their statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as a representative of the Republic of Korea. Allow me first to thank the Acting Special Envoy for her briefing and welcome the representative of Iraq in the chamber. We are all unified in agreeing that Daesh perpetrators must be held criminally accountable for their heinous crimes in Iraq and other states. With a shared commitment to pursue justice and accountability, we adopted Resolution 2379 at the request of the Iraqi government. The ROK commends UNITAD's tireless pursuit of evidence-based justice that establishes the truth and fulfills the requests of victims in Iraq. To preserve the legacy of UNITAD, which has commendably paved the foundation of accountability for the crimes of Daesh, both in Iraq and around the world, I would like to emphasize the following 3 points. First, we reiterate the importance of collaboration between Iraq and UNITAD. This includes helping to build the capacity of the Iraqi judiciary system in the areas of witness protection, digital forensics, and mass grave excavations. As such, the Republic of Korea calls for tailored initiatives beyond the closing of UNITAD by UN system entities to help the Iraq authorities in their fight to combat terrorism moving forward. Second, the uninterrupted chain of sharing and storing UNITAD evidence is of high importance to ensure continued accountability. In particular, access to UNITAD's archives by other states is integral in pursuing criminal accountability for Daesh crimes worldwide. Daesh cannot rely on impunity by fleeing abroad. The Republic of Korea echoes the calls of other members to establish a system to share the UNITAD archives in litigation in states other than Iraq, based on consultations with the Iraqi government. Third, the ROK welcomes UNITAD's focus on sexual and gender-based crimes and crimes against children committed by Daesh. As a proud signatory of the shared commitments on WPS, the Republic of Korea supports the importance of protecting women in armed conflict and enhancing their key roles and participation in all stages of peace processes. After the conclusion of UNITAD, we call on the Iraqi government to continue UNITAD's efforts not only to punish the perpetrators of sexual violence in conflict, but also to end the culture of impunity of gender-based violence. The depth, breadth, and speed of the work that UNITAD has undertaken for the last 6 years has been a source of global optimism for our common pursuit of justice against terrorism. Yet our quest for justice against Daesh does not stop in September. Daesh remains and is still committing crimes and spreading terror. UNITAD's legacy must send a clear message to them: your reign of impunity is over. The Republic of Korea stands firmly with the government of Iraq and Iraqi people to deliver justice for Daesh atrocities. Now I resume my function as President of the Council. I now give the floor to the representative of Iraq.
I thank you, Mr. President. Allow me to deliver my speech in Arabic.
I begin by expressing our congratulations to the Republic of Korea on its assumption of the presidency of the Security Council for the current month, and I wish your esteemed delegation success in your efforts. I would also like to congratulate the delegation of Mozambique for their successful stewardship of the Security Council last month. I express the appreciation of the Iraqi government, of the United Nations efforts, its main organs, and its main offices through its resolutions, its recommendations and decisions. We also appreciate all the international efforts that have been made to support Iraq in its war against terrorism and its pursuit of terrorists, taking into consideration Iraq's request on drawing down UNITAD's work so that its work could be completed at the national level. And since this is the first briefing to be offered by the team's new leadership, I thank Ms. Ana Piero Lopez and her team for the intensive and significant efforts that they've made during this short period of time. And we hope that they would be able to continue this work and their coordination with the National Coordinating Committee to arrive at the appropriate solutions to what remains in terms of retaining, custody, preserving, and storing evidence in Iraq as stipulated by Security Council Resolution 2697. Mr. President, we welcome what the 12th report of the UNITAD contained and what was presented by Ms. Piero Lopez, the Acting Special Advisor and head of the investigative team, in her briefing in accordance with Security Council Resolution 2697 of the year 2023. We welcome the activities that have been taken within the context of UNITAD's drawdown and liquidation. The report contains several important points that reflected the serious nature pursued in implementing the requirements of liquidation and drawdown within the set deadlines. It outlined the progress made in the team's work and the phases it has completed in Iraq through participation and coordination with the government of Iraq. It noted the accountability that has been achieved in cooperation with national authorities, as well as capacity building and training offered to the national Iraqi team so that it can take over UNITAD's functions and legacy once the drawdown is complete. The Iraqi government's position on terrorism has and always been in taking the necessary measures to eliminate this dangerous scourge. My government is working on building our national capacity in counterterrorism, and we are working on bolstering our judicial system in a manner that is in harmony with the principles of human rights and in full respect of Iraq's international obligations and as stipulated by the Iraqi constitution. We have made the necessary legal preparations for the use of the evidence once handed over to Iraq from UNITAD to be used by national courts. We continue to bolster our legal and national and judicial capacities, and in that vein, the Iraqi House of Representatives has completed the first reading of a bill establishing an Iraqi national court to consider Daesh's crimes to prepare for its legislation. This bill will use evidence in Iraqi courts to consider crimes perpetrated by Daesh, which can be classified as international crimes against Iraqi citizens. A lot of the above. And before drawdown is completed, we stress the need for the Iraqi authorities to receive the conclusions of UNITAD's investigations and evidence collected in Iraq over the past period, in accordance with paragraph 39 of the Terms of Reference. This paragraph tasks UNITAD in accordance with its mandate with the provision of appropriate legal assistance and capacity building to the government of Iraq in order to strengthen its courts and judicial systems, because the Iraqi people are the main victims of the crimes of Daesh in Iraq. This would be an incentive to continue to uncover more evidence of the other crimes committed by this terrorist organization. It will be an incentive to move forward in taking the necessary steps to preserve and store evidence in Iraq. Here we know that the government of Iraq is the party that represents victims and their families and has undertaken to the task of achieving redress for the victims and upholding justice for them. And the main role here is accorded to the specialized Iraqi authorities, which continue to exert great efforts to achieve accountability and through parallel tracks to achieve justice and redress and offer support to survivors, including victims and their families. Iraq will spare no effort, no matter how long it takes, and no matter the delays. It will spare no effort until justice and accountability are achieved to those whose hands are covered in the blood of Iraqis and for all the crimes that have been perpetrated by Daesh. Just as Iraqis defeated and uprooted Daesh, it will be Iraqis who will achieve accountability and justice for the crimes they have perpetrated in accordance with fair and just legal national procedures that are in line with Iraq's legislative jurisprudence. Mr. President, the government of Iraq reiterates its desire and readiness to share evidence with all countries once UNITAD draws down its operations in Iraq by the end of 2024. This includes evidence owned by Iraq and handed over to the UNITAD, and the evidence that was produced and developed by the team and which will ultimately be returned to the government of Iraq in accordance with the team's mandate. This emanates from Iraq's firm position to uphold accountability at the national level and to assist other countries in achieving this accountability as well. We support the continuation of collective international efforts to pursue those involved in Daesh's terrorist crimes and those who support and fund them in pursuit of the maintenance of international peace and security and confronting threats to national and global security, and in accordance with the national measures of countries, because it is important to deprive the terrorists who managed to flee Iraq from any safe havens. The government of Iraq reiterates its commitment to cooperating with the International Investigative Team and to offering it all means of support through the designated National Coordinating Committee so that it can go ahead with its drawdown, liquidation, and withdrawal measures with full respect for Iraq's sovereignty and legal jurisdiction over crimes perpetrated on its territory and against its people. We'd like to clarify here that Iraq will review the evidence that has been recently handed over by the team. At the same time, we understand that the new leadership of the team has much on its plate that it must complete within the drawdown and liquidation phase. Therefore, we urge the team leader to continue her efforts in handing over custody of this evidence to Iraq as soon as possible and to put in place mechanisms for the preservation and storage of said evidence in Iraq. We stress that cooperation between Iraq and the team is governed by the terms of reference, seeing as Iraq is the main recipient of evidence as well as any materials and analyses produced by the investigative team. In closing, allow me, Mr. President, to express our thanks and gratitude to you and to the members of the Security Council and to all friendly states that have offered positive support to my country as we confronted terrorism and as we sought to ensure the success of UNITAD, we thank you for the support given to Iraq and its efforts to hold accountable those who perpetrated crimes in Iraq within the context of the terrorist Daesh group. I would also like to salute former special advisors of UNITAD, Mr. Karim Khan and Mr. Christian Richard, who led UNITAD in the past, and we thank them for the efforts that they have made during their service to Iraq. I thank you, sir.
I thank the representative of Iraq for their statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.